Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises and glory and honor that's due to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Kakadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone that rule well. Peace and blessings and salutations to the hopeful elect. News in the gospel of broad lift the understanding of Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, wherever it may be. This is another lesson through the Spirit. It says Trump administration using Guantanamo to detain foreigners from 26 countries. And it's the article here. Matter of fact, let's see something here. Let me put this on real quick. Let me see if this is what it's talking
criminal
about.
Convictions as well.
It was also interesting to see that video of Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass on the.
Hold on. Let me see something real quick. Oh, never mind. That's two different things. But it says the Trump administration is using a naval base at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, to detain dozens of foreigners from 26 countries and 6 different continents, including detainees with serious criminal convictions, the Department of Homeland Security said on Tuesday. It says CBS reported last week that as a part of an expansion of the Trump administration's effort to turn Guantanamo Bay into an immigration detention center, officials have transferred detainees from Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean and Europe to the naval base. It says initially the base housed mainly Spanish-speaking Latin American migrants awaiting deportation. But it says here, what the hell? It says reporting us sharing full list of nationalities of those detained by Guantanamo Bay, as well as the names and criminal histories of more than 24 detainees. It says they are being held separately from remaining prisoners held there as a result of U.S. war on terror. It says the list shows Guantanamo Bay is housing detainees from all other continents other than Antarctica. It says the detainees, DHS said, hail from Brazil, of course, China, Colombia, the Dominican Republic, El Salvador, Ethiopia, Guatemala, Haiti, Honduras, India, Jamaica, Kenya, Liberia, the Marshall Islands, Micronesia, Myanmar, Nicaragua, Nigeria, Peru, Romania, Russia, Somalia, St. Kitts and Nevis, and the United Kingdom, Venezuela, and Vietnam. And there's no coincidence that most of these are countries that Israelites reside in, such as Brazil, Colombia, Dominican Republic, El Salvador, Guatemala, Haiti, Honduras, Jamaica, Liberia, Marshall Islands, and so forth. But it says the criminal records of the detainees whose names were shared by the DHS, which stands for the Department of Human Services, officials include convictions for homicide, sexual offenses, including against children, child pornography, assault with a weapon, kidnapping, drug smuggling, and robbery. It says the DHS officials said they all have final deportation orders, but those with criminal records are classified as high-risk detainees held at Camp 4, the post-9/11 prison complex at Guantanamo Bay that also holds around a dozen war on terror era detainees, which there was no war on fucking terror, man. All right, that was all bullshit. But it says through in a distinct part of the facility. It says those without serious criminal records or at all deemed to be low-risk detainees are housed at a barrack life facility known as the Migrant Operations Center. It says as a week, there were 72 immigration detainees at Guantanamo Bay, and 58 of them were classified as high risk and 14 in low risk category, with 2 U.S. officials told CBS News requesting amenity to discuss internal data. But the administration began using the base to hold immigrant detainees early in February. So basically it's a concentration camp, and I heard reports that Trump is trying to open up another alligator Alcatraz type facility, which they have those facilities all over the world, all over the country, man. Okay, you got Walmart, you got Target, you got abandoned factories, you got shopping malls, you got apartment complexes, you got all sorts of places that you can detain citizens here, man, and turn into FEMA camps, which FEMA camps are coming back in a big way because we're in those times. But it says the Trump administration has sought to use controversial detention centers and prisons to warn those in the U.S. illegally, particularly those convicted of serious crimes, that they will be found, detained, and deported if they don't turn themselves in or self-deport. But it says in a statement, the DHS Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs Tricia McLaughlin, said the detention of foreigners with criminal records at Guantanamo Bay shows that President Trump and Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem are using every tool available to get criminal illegal aliens off our streets and out of our country, which is all folly because for the simple fact, they're talking about detaining U.S. citizens too. Okay, see what they did with the Haitians? They're giving them to like September to self-deport, where they're going to come after them, man. The same way they came after the Northern Kingdom. You see? So yeah, man, this dude is that cruel Lord that it talks about in Isaiah, the 19th chapter. But not only that, ICE budget increases over 1,000% with big beautiful bill. It says we have a standing army. But wait a minute, man. Why the hell would you need to increase the budget for ICE when ICE is basically stands for Immigration Customs Enforcement, I believe, or something to that degree? I probably butchered it, but regardless of it, you know, ICE is just supposed to play a role in deporting illegal aliens, man. But why are you increasing that budget more and more? Because for the simple fact, man, I believe that ICE and FEMA are working together in tandem. Okay, and I believe that not only that, they're gonna hire some of the most lowest down racist Gestapo type troops or cops to go in and just start grabbing up Jake, man. Because why else are they increasing the budget? You know, if you only have a handful of said illegals here. And not to mention, what about the people that came over from different countries? You know, like Yugoslavia, Russia, you know, China, you know, parts of Africa, Iran, Ukraine. Even though they mentioned in the previous article that they were housing people from 26 different countries, I don't really believe that, man, because you had that one guy that came across the border in 2023, and he stated that you're going to know exactly who I am, man. And we believe that he was a sleeper cell and found out that they was transporting air-to-surface missiles across the border. So why aren't this being talked about? You know? But anyway, it says ICE increases budget over 1,000% with big beautiful bill. So they're cutting funding to like Medicare and different types of welfare programs, and yet they're increasing more money with military spending and on this ICE shit. And on top of that, this whole AI infrastructure, because they're going to need the manpower in order to force people into these detention centers so they can take that chip. So this comes at a perfect time, man. All right. So anyway, let me get a couple of precepts or a precept real quick, and then we'll get back to the article. All right, so this is the book of Psalms 140, and I'm going to start at 1. It says, "Deliver me, O Yahweh, from the evil man, and preserve me from the violent men." And that violent man is these devils, man. Because if you notice, they're trying to come up with an anti-S, or they already have it, but I don't think they have. They haven't mandated it, but there's an anti-S bill that they want to bring about to stop certain talking points against the small hats. They're working on that, man. So it's just a matter of time before they start to criminalize anybody that's speaking out against the small hats. So I assume that they're going to increase the budget for ICE, because they're going to use ICE and different types of police forces to try to round us up and put us in these detention centers, man. Those days are coming. All right. But it says here, "Deliver me from the evil man, preserve me from the violent man, which imagine mischiefs in their heart." It says, "Continually they are gathered together for war." Yeah, and shit, ICE, I mean, the police force, they're like warmongers, man, because the police force have been militarized since 2001, or a little bit after that, since the fake ass war on terror. But a lot of these police departments, especially the ones in bigger cities, hey, they got all types of gear. They got fucking high-powered vehicles. They have all types of equipment, you know. And we've been warning you that this man is getting ready to take off the gloves, because he knows that his kingdom is ending. So he's getting ready to go all out. But it said, "They have sharpened their tongues like a serpent. Out its poison is under their lips. Salah. But keep me, O Yahweh, from the hands of the wicked. Preserve me from the violent men who have purposed to overthrow my goings." And this is exactly what Esau was doing. So, hey, he's getting ready to roll on the tribes, and he's going to come after the men of the Lord, because they're going to push something in legislation or some type of talking point that's going to make it illegal for us to speak out against the system. Or they may just start grabbing brothers up off the radar, off the books, man. You know, they may just do that and try to take brothers to black sites and all this other crazy shit and interrogate them and, you know, try to intimidate them so they can give up the faith. But if Yahweh Hashem Yahushua is with you, who could be against you? So our faith is getting ready to be tested, man. All right. And we got to be fucking ready. because this devil ain't gonna play fair. It says, the proud have laid a snare for me and the cords, and they have spread a net by the wayside. They have set gins for me, yeah, through policies and legislations and so forth. Certain talking points, they'll go and set up certain events to create an effect so they can bring out a particular law or mandate against that. So this whole Gestapo / draconian setup, they're working on it, man. And this is one reason why they're putting all this money into AI, because AI is going to help them govern the New World Order. You know, it says, I said unto the Lord, thou art my power. Hear my voice, my supplications, O Yahweh. All right. So, hey, we got to really be on point, you know, because like I mentioned, man, these devils ain't going to come in fair. They ain't going to play fair, as they never do. All right. Let's go from here to the book of Luke. Not Mark, but the book of Luke, 13th chapter. And let's start at verses 9. It says, but take heed to yourselves. It says, for they should deliver you up to councils, and in the synagogues ye should be beaten, and ye should be brought before rulers and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them. All right. So, hey, modern day, some brothers going to have to be locked up for this truth, man. Okay. Until the missiles drop, some brothers going to have to get that guillotine, you know. But then a lot of us, we ain't going to be touched because, hey, the Lord said that he's going to raise up a standard. So it says, Congress passed President Donald Trump's one big beautiful bill on Thursday. It says legislation that balloons the budget for immigration enforcement to more than 10 times its current size. But wait a minute, man. Why the hell are they increasing the budget for ICE for? It's kind of suspect, right? But it says the bill allocates more than $100 billion to immigration and customs enforcement and border enforcement through September 2029. It says AXO reported, though roughly 1,000% increase to ICE's $8 billion budget makes ICE the largest federal law enforcement agency, according to Brennan Center. And this is one of the first time they had a federal law enforcement. I mean, you got the FBI, of course, but even then, that shit is against the Constitution, because since when does the federal government need to police? But this is what they do. But it says, with this vote, Congress makes ICE the highest funded federal law enforcement agency in history, meaning they're getting ready to do something big, okay? And hence, they're getting ready to start filling up these detention centers, man. This is why they're increasing the budget, because not only would this budget come with more manpower, more weapons, more vehicles, okay, it's going to come with them building these internment facilities, man. And somehow, some way, even though he's defunded FEMA, FEMA is written all on this, because we understand that FEMA is going to play a big role in lending out the concentration camps. So concentration camps are coming back, man. For those of you that thought we was conspiracy nuts and we was pulling your leg and making this stuff up, no. Okay, concentration camps are coming back. They're already here. I remember going back into 2012, they was talking about over 800 active or inactive FEMA camps right here in America. So they really ain't got to build shit. They can just throw you in the ones they already got. Guillotines, you know, chipping centers, all that stuff. But it says with more money per year, and it's all being funded by taxpayers' dollars, by the way. But it says with more money per year at its disposal over the next 4 years than the budgets of the FBI, damn, DEA, ATF, U.S. Marshals, and Bureau of Prisons combined, wrote Aaron Melnick, senior fellow of American Immigration Council. So these motherfuckers got a bigger budget than the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, the U.S. Marshal, and the Bureau of Prisons combined. Oh, yeah, this man is getting ready to go batshit crazy, to say the least. Why the hell does a immigrant, like, you don't even, I mean, okay, let's just say you got illegals here. All right, you got illegals here, right? Which technically, they have a right to this land, all right? Who the fuck are you to call somebody illegal when you're the illegal alien, my nigga? But then again, you know, let's just say hypothetically, you may have 5% of the people here, like a good 2%. Say you got probably 1 million, 2 million illegals here. That doesn't justify $100 billion budget to deport 2 million motherfuckers, man. I mean, it don't, and I doubt if it's that many people, that many illegal people here. Then again, it could be, but that don't justify $100 million budget increase, bro. That's wild. But it says, celebrating the bill's passage, conservative commentator Charlie Kirk quoted the insider who told him this makes the border court proof. It says, we have a standing army. Exactly. It says here, the administration's aggressive push for immigration crackdown with White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, he's a demon, famously demanding 3,000 immigrants arrests per day, has strained ICE's existing budget, but last month the agency was reported to exceed its allocating funding by $1 billion. I don't believe that. It says now the new funding could double detention capacity, concentration camps, dramatically increase enforcement personnel, and fuel border crackdowns. But nearly $30 billion will be invested in hiring, there you go, and training ICE agents and investigators, as well as updates to transportation and technology weapons used by the agency. It says $45 billion is marked for detention centers, FEMA camps. So they're going to use $45 billion to renovate and update these already they got concentration camps, man. Okay, you see they put alligator Alcatraz or crocodile aqua. They put that shit up in a week and a day, man. All right, it literally takes longer for you to get a court hearing or to sue somebody in a court, but they can put up a damn tent center in 8 days, and you people are still getting up, going to work, and you don't see nothing wrong with this. You don't see the dread is coming, man. Hey, man, it's Jacob's trouble. It's the funding right here. But it says with the number of beds expecting to raise to 116,000, Congress previously allocated funds for 41,500 beds. But by June, CBS reported ICE detention centers have already reached 140% capacity. It says the border wall will receive $46.5 billion for construction, renovations, and surveillance equipment. And border crossings in June reached a historic low with just over 6,000 arrests. But funding for immigration judges and attorneys pales in comparison to the increased financing for arrest and detainment. $3.3 billion will go toward immigration courts, with the cap limiting immigration judges and supportive staff up to 800. And the American Immigration Council warns the budget disparity is likely to dramatically increase already high immigration court backlogs, which this is adding to the deficit. So this is accelerating the collapse of the dollar. But the big, beautiful bill passed both chambers largely on party lines, making it one of the largest expansions of immigration enforcement funding in U.S. history. And the reason why this passed and a lot of Republicans signed off on it and Democrats, because they understood one thing. The common enemy is to get rid of you niggas, man. You Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. And that's the reality of it. All right? So let's go from here. Jeremiah 6, and I'm going to start at verses 22. It says, thus says Yahweh, behold, a people coming from the north country, and a great nation should be raised from the sides of the earth. And they shall lay hold on bow and spear. And they are cruel and have no mercy, and their voice roared like the sea. It says they ride upon horses, set in array as men for war against thee, O daughter of Zion, man. So these military troops or these ICE agents and, UN troops, whatever, whoever they may be, Gurkha, whatever you want to call them, Interpol, they got troops all around this place, man. And on top of that, you already have a hidden military hidden within the realms of America, man, because you got the UN over here. And don't be surprised if a lot of these ICE agents turn out to be UN agents, man. So it's not looking good for the common American, all right? Because Jacob's trouble is everybody's trouble. But going down here, it says here in the gospel, it says you should be brought before kings for my sake, for a testimony against them. And the gospel must be first published among all nations. But when they shall lead you and deliver you up, take no thought beforehand what ye should speak, neither do you premeditate. It says, but whatsoever should be given you in that hour, that ye speak. For it's not ye that speak, but the Holy Ghost. Okay, so yeah, man, it's coming to the time of great persecution, because you heard what they did. They said they're coming out the Haitians, and that's the southern kingdom. So when they start targeting Judah, all right, and actually the Judah, you Negroes in America, they're going to do dirty with you, man. They're going to treat you worse than they're going to treat you worse than all the other tribes, man, because they understand who you are. And it says here, now the brother should betray brother to death, and the father to son. And the children shall rise up against their parents, and shall cause them to be put to death. And ye should be hated of all men for my name's sake. But he that endured to the end, the same should be saved, man. So we have to endure this because, hey, some brothers are going to get caught up in these floods, man. All right, the scriptures say that the flood of ungodly men made me afraid. So it's time to really lock in and get serious, man, because this shit is not going to be, it's not going to be a cakewalk, to say the least. All right. Precept, same thing here. This is the same thing I just read in Luke 21. But beware of men, for they should deliver you up to the councils, and they will scourge you in their synagogues, and you should be brought before governors and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them and the Gentiles, man. And this is a common thing, because the men of the Lord, they were often brought before magistrates like Paul. You know, he had to appear before Caesar. You know, then you had Felix. Okay, you know, you had the different Caesars and so forth. You had Nero. Okay, you had Antipater, Idumean. You know, you had Julius Caesar. You had all these different men that sat in the higher councils during the time when we were slaves in the Roman Empire, man. Okay, you had what's this guy's name? Titus, Vespasian, Domitian. You know, what's his name? Caligula or something, I can't recall it. But anyway, Acts 12, and I'm gonna start at verses 1, and it says, "Now at that time that Herod the king stretched forth his hand to vex certain of the church, and he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword," man. All right, and it says that because he saw it pleased the Jews, he proceeded to take Peter also. Then that were the days of unleavened bread, which is the Passover. But when you go here to let's do this. Let's look at the interlinear concordance. No, I don't want the concordance. I want to go to the text commentaries, right? Okay, so text commentaries, Acts 12:1. Let's see what it says. Commentary on Acts 12. Herod, so it was Agrippa. So it says of the martyrdom of James the Apostle and the imprisonment of Peter by Herod Agrippa. I think Paul had to appeal before him, if I'm not mistaken. I think he had to go before him as well. I think, was this the one I think that he said he almost convinced him to become a Jew or Israelite? I can't recall, but I do know it's in Acts. I was reading it a couple of months ago. I got to go back over the history. But one of the Herodians, he was like, "Man, you almost convinced me that to believe." But it says, "Now who reigned as king of Judea." It says, "The miraculous deliverance of Peter out of prison by the ministry of an angel, the answer to the prayers of the church." All right. It says, "The cutting off of Herod and the heights of his pride and the stroke of an angel, such and such and such." All right. But it says, "Ever since the conversion of Paul, we have heard no more of the agency of the priests and the persecuting of the saints of Jerusalem." It says, "Perhaps the wonderful change wrought upon him and the disappointment it gave to their design upon the Christians at Damascus has somewhat mollified him." All right. It says here, "Brought to them under the check of Galileo's advice, let those men alone and see what would be the issue." But here where the storm arises from another point. It says, "The civil power, not now as usual, for all they appears stirred up by the ecclesiastics acts by itself in the persecution. But Herod, though originally of an Edomite family," see, he was Esau, which proves the Herodians were Esau. It says, "Yet seems to have been a proselyte to the Jewish religion." But it says, "For Josephus said he was zealous of the Mosaic rites, a bigot for the ceremonies." But it says he was not only as Herod Antipas was, a tetrarch of Galilee, but had also the government of Judea committed to him by Claudius the emperor, and resided most at Jerusalem, where he was at this time. All right. So perhaps unconscious habits matter. It says here, "He stretched forth his hands to vex certain of the church." It says his stretching forth of hands to it imitates that his hands have been tied up by the restraints which perhaps his own conscience held him under this matter. But now he broke through them, stretched forth his hands deliberately and of malice prepense. It says Herod laid hands upon some of the church to afflict them. So some read it, he employed his officers to seize them and to take them into custody in order to, it says, in order to their being persecuted. Seeing, all right, so it says he began with some members of the church. Certain of them that were of less note and figure played first a small game, but afterwards flew at the apostles themselves. So he came at the leadership. It says his spite was at the church, and with regard to those he gave trouble to, it was not upon any other account, but because they belonged to the church, and so belonged to Yahushua. Yahushua said, "You should surely drink of this cup." So we're going to have to go through a similar ordeal. It says he began vexing them only, or afflicting them, imprisoning them, finding them, spoiling their houses and goods, and other ways molesting them. But afterwards he proceeded to greater instances of cruelty. It says Yahushua's sufferings servants are thus trained up by less troubles for greater, that tribulation may work patience, and patience in experience. But he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. But it says we are to consider whose the martyr was. It says it was James, the brother of John, so-called distinguished from the other James, the brother of Joses. But this was called Jacobus, Major James the Great, and the Minor James the Lesser, because you had James the Lesser as well, and James the Great, James the Greater, and you had James the Lesser. But it says this, who was here crowned with martyrdom, was one of the first three of Yahushai's disciples, of one of those that were the witness of his transfiguration and agony. It says, wherefore he was prepared for martyrdom, but he was one of those whom Yahushai called Boganim, son of thunder, and perhaps by his powerful awakening, preaching here provoked Herod, had that fire, and those about him, as John the Baptist did the other Herod, and that was the occasion of his coming him into this trouble, because he was preaching, he was cursing their ass out, man. All right, it says he was one of those sons of Zebedee, whom Yahushai told that they should drink of the cup that he was to drink of, and be baptized with the baptism that he was to be baptized with, Matthew 20 and 23. All right, when Yahushai said that you should surely drink of this cup. But it says, and now those words of Yahushai were made good in him, but it was in order to his sitting at Yahushai's right hand. It says, for if we suffer with him, we shall reign with him. And he was one of the 12 who was commissioned to disciple all nations and to take them off now before he had removed from Jerusalem. Okay, and that's the point. So yeah, man, they're getting ready to make moves on the men of the Lord and just the tribes in general. So nothing new under the sun. Let's go here. Acts. Let's go here. Faithful martyr. Hold on. Martyr. Let me go back. Martyr. Faithful. Yep. Antipas. I believe he was they had something which is called the forgot what it's called, but it's called the not the Flaming Bull, but basically it was a torture regimen. What they do, they would put you inside this particular bull, and they had like a horn on the inside, and as they're lighted on fire, and what happens is as it heats up, and as you're trying to blow for air, because apparently you affix, you know, what they call I can't pronounce it, but when you go into hyperventilating, and then you can, you know, you die from smoke inhalation and also being burned alive. Basically, when you're blowing through that particular, because I did some research on a while ago, but when you're blowing through that particular instrument that's located within the bull, it lets out like a particular sound, you know, and I believe that's what happened with him. I believe he was put inside the, it's not called a paper bull, I don't think, but it's called, basically what they did, they had an instrument and they would basically cook your ass alive inside of it. And that was a common torture regimen that the Romans besought on the Israelites, man. So you niggas are getting ready to go through similar shit, man. All right. But anyway, it says here, I know thy works and where thou dwellest, even where Satan's seat is, and thou holdest fast my name and has not denied my faith. Even in the days wherein Antipas was my favorite martyr, who was slain among you where Satan dwelleth, and Satan is you damn Edomites, man. All right, but when we go here to text commentaries, let's go here. Matter of fact, let's do this. I'm gonna do a chat GTP real quick. Chat GTP. History behind Revelation. History behind Revelation 2. And I think it was verses 2 and 13. And they're going to give us some history on it. worship. Antipas. Bingo. Bronze bull. There you go. Yep. It says church. Antipas is described as a faithful witness who was martyred. Church tradition holds Antipas was a bishop at Pergamum and was killed, possibly burnt alive in a bronze bull for refusing emperor worship. So they burnt him alive. It says he's one of the earliest recorded Israelite martyrs outside of the New Testament apostolic circle. Okay, but yeah, it's called the bronze bull. They basically lighted, they'll put heat to it, and basically they'll burn your ass alive, man. It's a horrifying death, And hey, do 2/3, you're gonna get all types of rigorous treatment. And hey, like the scriptures tells us, man, some men of the Lord are gonna suffer to this fate, beheading. The scriptures tell you how some of the elect members are gonna go out through beheading. Now, is there other ways that, brothers may, get persecuted and possibly sent to the spirit world? Here there is. There's all types of shit. Firing squad, torching, gas, man. You have to use your imagination with this thing. And it's not to make anybody afraid because, shit, who wants to be tortured, right? But, hey, Esau's bringing that shit back in a big way. I don't think that they're not torturing these migrants and these people that they got in these particular the concentration camps, like Alligator Alcatraz. You don't think they're gonna torture people up in there? And the fact that they're feeding people to alligators, that's a form of torture, man. So yeah, this man has to be stopped. He's coming down with great wrath, man, and he's not gonna stop until Yahweh Shem Shai gets him. But this is the book of Revelation 2:10. It says, "Fear none of those things, for thou shalt suffer." It says, "Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried, and ye shall have tribulation 10 days. It says, "Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life." Okay? But he that have an ear, let him hear what the Spirit have said unto the churches. He that overcometh shall not be hurt of the second death. So, hey, you have to be martyrs for Yahweh Shem Shai, and hey, prepare your minds, Not saying that's going to be every brother's fate, because clearly it's not, but, somebody's going to have to fulfill these scriptures, man. But anyway, I'm going to end it, giving all praises and glory and honor that's due to Yahweh Shem Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Lord's will you edify. Until the next lesson. Shalom.